Before you try to control the world, you must learn to control yourself. Most people never do. They try to change their environment. They try to dominate situations. They try to force outcomes. But they cannot control their emotions. They cannot control their focus. They cannot control their reactions. And that is why the world controls them. If your emotions react automatically, you are not in control. If your attention is easily stolen, you are not in control. If pressure makes you panic, explain, or retreat, you are not in control. And without control, nothing you build lasts. This audiobook is not about motivation. Motivation fades. This audiobook is about discipline. Discipline remains. Discipline is the ability to stay steady while everything around you tries to move you. Discipline is emotional control under pressure. Discipline is focus when distraction is everywhere. Discipline is silence when your ego wants to speak. Most people live externally. They react to comments. They react to comparison. They react to noise. They are pulled in every direction, and they call that life. But the people who master themselves live internally. They decide before the moment arrives. They remain calm when others react. They move without announcing. They let results speak. This audiobook trains that internal strength. You will learn how to control emotional impulses. Detach from validation and approval. Focus deeply without stimulation. Build discipline through repetition. Stay composed when pressure rises. This is not a quick fix. This is training. You don't need more information. You need fewer reactions. You don't need more confidence. You need emotional control. You don't need to master the world yet. First, master yourself. Now listen carefully and apply what you hear. Chapter 1, You are not struggling, you are undisciplined. Here is the truth most people avoid. You are not overwhelmed. You are not unlucky. You are not burned out. You are undisciplined. That may sound harsh, but it's accurate. Most people call it stress because stress sounds external. Stress sounds like something happening to you. Discipline sounds internal. And responsibility is uncomfortable. So people avoid it. But listen carefully. When your emotions run unchecked, your behavior follows. When your reactions are automatic, your outcomes are predictable. That's the key. Emotion unmanaged becomes behavior uncontrolled. Most people are not failing because life is too hard. They are failing because they cannot regulate themselves when life applies pressure. Pressure doesn't create weakness. Pressure reveals it. You see this everywhere. Someone receives criticism and immediately defends themselves. Someone faces delay and becomes frustrated. Someone encounters resistance and quits. Not because they lack skill. Not because they lack intelligence. Because they lack discipline. They feel first. They act second. And they wonder why nothing changes. You have a choice. You can continue to label emotional chaos as stress. Or you can see it for what it really is. A lack of self-regulation. And until that is fixed, nothing else matters. You don't need better circumstances. You need better control. That's the difference. Look at how most people behave under pressure. They rush. They explain. They complain. They react. They mistake emotional expression for progress. But emotional expression solves nothing. Discipline does. Discipline is not force. Discipline is not intensity. Discipline is restraint. It is the ability to pause when your emotions want to act. It is the ability to choose deliberately instead of reacting automatically. Most people never develop this skill. They allow mood to decide behavior. They allow stress to decide tone. They allow discomfort to decide commitment. And then they call it life. It's not life. It's lack of control. That's the key. Emotion unmanaged becomes behavior uncontrolled. Let's be clear. Stress is not the problem. Life has always been stressful. The problem is emotional leakage. Every time you react impulsively, you leak energy. Every time you vent, you leak focus. Every time you justify, you leak authority. You don't need to express everything you feel. You don't need to act on every emotion. You don't need their permission. Strong people don't feel less. They control more. They feel anger, but they don't act from it. They feel pressure, but they don't panic. They feel discomfort, but they don't quit. That is discipline. And discipline is trained. Most people avoid this truth because it removes excuses. If your results are inconsistent, it's not because you're unlucky. It's because your behavior is inconsistent. If your progress stops under pressure, it's not because pressure is unfair. It's because your discipline collapses when emotions rise. That's not judgment. That's diagnosis. And diagnosis is power. You have a choice. You can continue reacting. Or you can start regulating. Regulation means deciding before emotion arrives. Before stress hits. Before conflict starts. Before fatigue shows up. You decide how you behave, in advance. That's discipline. Here is a simple rule most people never follow. Your emotions are information, not instructions. They tell you something is happening. They do not tell you what to do. Most people let emotions drive behavior. Disciplined people let principles drive behavior. That's the difference. That's why two people can face the same pressure and respond completely differently. One collapses. One steadies. One reacts. One regulates. Same environment. Different discipline. You don't need to be calmer. You need to be trained. Training means repetition. Every time you feel frustration and choose silence, you train discipline. Every time you feel stress and choose structure, you train discipline. Every time you feel the urge to quit and choose consistency, you train discipline. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being controlled. That's the key. Emotion unmanaged becomes behavior uncontrolled. Most people wait until they feel better to act better. That's backwards. You act better first. Feelings follow. Discipline precedes motivation. Control precedes confidence. You don't wait to feel focused to work. You work, and focus appears. You don't wait to feel calm to be disciplined. You act disciplined, and calm follows. This is where most people fail. They negotiate with emotions. They ask permission from mood. Disciplined people do not negotiate. They decide. They follow rules, not feelings. Rules remove decision fatigue. Rules create consistency. Consistency creates progress. That's how control is built. You don't need to fix your entire life today. You need to fix your reactions. Start there. When something triggers you, pause. When pressure rises, slow down. When emotion spikes, say less. Not because you're weak. Because you're disciplined. You have a choice. React like everyone else. Or regulate like someone who wants control. One leads to chaos. The other leads to mastery. And mastery always begins internally. Before you try to control outcomes. Before you try to control situations. Before you try to control other people. You must control yourself. Because without self-control, everything else is noise. You are not struggling. You are undisciplined. And the moment you accept that, you gain the power to change it. You've identified the real problem. Now it's time to talk about the first real solution. You mastered awareness. Now, let's talk about power. If this audiobook is helping you build discipline and emotional control, support the channel by subscribing. This channel is built to train your mind, not entertain it. Chapter 2: Emotional control is the first form of power. Most people think power is loud. They imagine power as dominance, as force, as control over others. They think power walks into a room demanding attention. They think it raises its voice. They think it proves itself. They're wrong. Real power is silent. Real power is invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It doesn't chase validation. Real power happens before you speak. Before you react. Before you feel the urge to explain yourself. That pause, that space, is where power lives. And most people never learn to enter it. Every single day, something tries to pull a reaction out of you. A comment that hits a nerve. A look that feels disrespectful. A memory that stirs resentment. A comparison that triggers insecurity. A criticism that feels unfair. And the moment you react emotionally, you give something away. You hand over control. That is the trade most people make without realizing it. They think reacting is strength. They think expressing emotion is honesty. They think defending themselves is necessary. But what they're actually doing is exposing leverage. Because if something controls your emotions, it controls you. Not tomorrow. Not over time. Immediately. Most people don't lose power because they're incapable. They lose it because they react. They argue when silence would have protected them. They defend when restraint would have elevated them. They explain when mystery would have commanded respect. They justify when confidence would have closed the conversation. And in doing so, they reveal insecurity. Every emotional reaction sends a signal. It says, this affected me. It says, this got inside me. It says, you found a pressure point. Silence sends a different message. Silence says, you don't control my inner state. Restraint says, I decide what deserves my energy. Composure says, I am not easily moved. That's power. You don't need to dominate the room. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to prove your intelligence. You don't need to win every argument. You need to control your emotional response. Because emotion, unmanaged, becomes behavior uncontrolled. And behavior uncontrolled leads to regret. Watch people in conflict. The one who loses control loses leverage. Every time. The louder one isn't winning. The angrier one isn't stronger. The reactive one isn't in charge. The calm one is. Because calm keeps options open. Calm keeps perspective intact. Calm prevents irreversible decisions. Emotion closes doors. Control keeps them open. Watch people facing criticism. The one who reacts emotionally exposes exactly where they're vulnerable. A raised voice reveals insecurity. Defensiveness reveals doubt. Over-explaining reveals fear of judgment. Criticism only has power when it triggers emotion. When it doesn't, it becomes information, nothing more. And information can be evaluated calmly, discarded, or used. But emotion turns information into identity. That's where people lose themselves. Watch people who constantly compare themselves to others. The moment comparison triggers emotion, focus is gone. Jealousy drains clarity. Envy fractures discipline. Resentment poisons momentum. Comparison isn't just distracting, it's destabilizing. It pulls your attention away from your own path and hands it to someone else's progress. That's not motivation. That's surrender. If it controls your emotions, it controls you. Your time. Your focus. Your decisions. That includes people. That includes memories. That includes opinions. That includes imagined judgments. Anything that can make you react without your permission has authority over you. And most people live under that authority their entire lives. This chapter is about reclaiming that control. Not by suppressing emotion. Not by becoming cold or detached. But by mastering emotion. Because emotional control is not weakness. It is strength under discipline. It is awareness paired with restraint. It is the ability to feel deeply, without being ruled. Let's be clear. Emotional control does not mean you feel nothing. It means you choose when and how you respond. It means emotion informs you, but does not command you. There is a difference. Most people confuse emotional expression with authenticity. But uncontrolled emotion is not authenticity. It's impulse. And impulse is predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate. Power begins the moment you stop reacting automatically. The moment you pause. The moment you breathe. The moment you observe the emotion instead of obeying it. Ask yourself one question in that pause. Is this reaction serving my long-term control, or my short-term relief? Short-term relief feels good. It releases tension. It satisfies ego. But it costs power. Long-term control feels uncomfortable. It requires restraint. It demands patience. But it builds authority over yourself first. The disciplined person understands this. They don't chase the emotional high of reaction. They don't need to win every moment. They don't need to correct everyone. They play the long game. They know that emotional restraint compounds. Every time you don't react, you strengthen the muscle of control. Every time you choose silence over impulse, you gain leverage. Every time you master your inner state, the external world loses influence. This is why emotional control is the first form of power. Before wealth. Before status. Before influence. Because without it, everything else becomes fragile. Money without emotional control leads to reckless decisions. Status without emotional control leads to scandal. Influence without emotional control leads to collapse. Power that isn't anchored internally will always be taken externally. Once you have emotional control, nothing outside you can move you without permission. Not praise. Not criticism. Not pressure. Not provocation. You become stable. And stability is intimidating. Because it cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It cannot be shaken. You don't need their approval. You don't need their validation. You don't need their permission. You need command over yourself. That is where power begins. Now, in the next part, we will break down exactly how emotional reactions steal your power. And how disciplined restraint gives it back. Step by step. Practically. Relentlessly. This channel is built for people who want power over themselves, not attention from others. If that's you, stay with us. Now let's continue. Chapter 3, Stop Reacting, Start Regulating. Most people believe reacting quickly makes them strong. They think speed is confidence. They think immediacy is dominance. They think the fastest response wins. It doesn't. Reaction is not power. Reaction is exposure. Every time you react immediately, you reveal your inner state. You show what irritates you. You show what unsettles you. You show what controls you. That is the truth most people avoid. Reaction is automatic. Regulation is trained. And only one of them puts you in control. You always have a choice. You can let your emotions decide your behavior. Or you can decide deliberately, regardless of how you feel. That decision begins with one skill. The pause. Most people never pause. They respond to messages the second they arrive. They get irritated by delays. They interpret silence as rejection. They take neutral events personally. They escape boredom instead of mastering it. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, distracted, and overwhelmed. Here is the rule. Remember it. Pause first. Decide second. That is the difference between reaction and regulation. Not reacting does not make you weak. It makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Predictable people are easy to provoke. Easy to manipulate. Easy to steer emotionally. The regulated person is not. Let's bring this into real life. You receive a message that feels dismissive. Short. Cold. Lacking effort. Your body tightens. Your chest contracts. Your mind starts forming a reply before you even notice. That moment, right there, is the test. Most people fail it. They react. They explain themselves. They defend their position. They escalate the tone. And in doing so, they hand control to the message. But disciplined people do something different. They pause. They don't rush to clarity. They don't chase emotional relief. They don't surrender authority to impulse. They breathe. They wait. Not because they are afraid, but because they refuse to be controlled. You do not owe immediacy. You owe intention. Another example. You're waiting. In traffic. In a line. For a response. For progress. Your irritation rises. You think the waiting is the problem. It isn't. The irritation is not caused by waiting. It's caused by expectation. You expected speed. You expected convenience. You expected control. And when reality doesn't comply, emotion demands reaction. Here is the truth. Life will never move at your emotional pace. So you must train patience, not demand comfort. That is discipline. And discipline begins where entitlement ends. Now let's talk about disrespect. This is where most people give their power away. Someone doesn't respond immediately. Someone doesn't acknowledge you. Someone doesn't react the way you hoped. And suddenly, offense. But ask yourself this. Why does their behavior get to decide your emotional state? If it controls your emotions, it controls you. That rule does not bend. Regulation means refusing to assign meaning automatically. It means saying, I don't know their intention, and I don't need to. That is strength. Emotionally weak people rush to interpretation. Disciplined people wait for clarity, or don't require it at all. Now boredom. This is where regulation is truly tested. Boredom exposes the untrained mind. The moment stimulation drops, most people panic internally. They reach for noise. Scrolling. Checking. Consuming. Why? Because stillness forces awareness. And awareness is uncomfortable for undisciplined minds. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. If you can sit with boredom, you can sit with pressure. If you can regulate boredom, you can regulate stress. If you can control yourself when nothing is happening, you will not lose yourself when everything is happening. That's the connection most people never make. Here is a daily discipline you must adopt. It is simple. It is uncomfortable. And it is effective. Delay your reactions. Not forever. Just long enough to regain control. Before responding to messages, wait. Before speaking, pause. Before deciding, breathe. That pause is not hesitation. It is authority. You are not late. You are deliberate. You do not need to react to prove confidence. You do not need to respond to prove intelligence. You do not need to explain to prove worth. Your value is not validated by speed. You already know who you are. That is the mindset shift. Reaction seeks validation. Regulation reflects certainty. Most people live like this. Stimulus, emotion, reaction. Disciplined people live like this. Stimulus, pause, decision. That pause is where identity is formed. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you reinforce control. Every time you delay instead of impulsively responding, you strengthen discipline. This is not dramatic. It is repetitive. And repetition builds power. Say it again, because repetition matters. Pause first. Decide second. Say it when you're irritated. Say it when you're bored. Say it when you feel challenged. Say it when silence feels uncomfortable. Your emotions are signals, not commands. You do not obey signals. You interpret them. This chapter is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming ungovernable. You still feel anger. You still feel frustration. You still feel pressure. But those feelings no longer dictate your behavior. That is mastery. Here is the deeper truth most people miss. If you cannot regulate small reactions, you will never handle big pressure. Control is built in micro moments. Texts, delays, boredom, silence, waiting. That is where discipline lives. Not in grand speeches. Not in motivation. Not in intensity. But in quiet, repeated restraint. You are not trying to dominate others. You are learning to dominate yourself. And that is the only power that lasts. You have mastered the pause. Now it is time to understand why silence multiplies your control. This is not entertainment. This is discipline training. If you feel resistance while listening, that is the work. Stay with it. Let's move on. Chapter 4: The Discipline of Silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not fear. Silence is not submission. Silence is what remains when you no longer need validation. Most people think power looks loud. It doesn't. Power looks calm. Power looks unmoved. Power looks like someone who could speak, but chooses not to. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. And control is the foundation of discipline. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence exposes them. When there is no noise, no talking, no reacting, no defending, there is nothing to hide behind. No personality mask. No explanations. No emotional cover. Just you. That's why people rush to fill every gap with words. They speak to release tension. They explain to feel secure. They respond to feel visible. And every time they do, they leak power. You have a choice. You can speak to manage how you feel. Or you can stay silent and manage yourself. That difference decides who controls the moment. Silence is not passive. Silence is active restraint. And restraint is discipline. Most people believe power comes from saying the right thing. It doesn't. Power comes from knowing when to say nothing. The more you talk, the more you reveal. Your intentions. Your doubts. Your emotional state. Silence protects all of it. That's the key most people never learn. Strong people speak with intention. Weak people speak for relief. This is not about being mysterious. It's about being controlled. Watch people under pressure. They get criticized. They feel challenged. They feel misunderstood. And almost instantly, they rush to explain themselves. They defend. They justify. They argue. Not because it's necessary, but because their emotions demand release. Silence denies emotions that release. And emotions hate being denied. That's why silence feels uncomfortable at first. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. Every time you resist the urge to speak, you strengthen discipline. You don't need permission to be quiet. You don't need approval to pause. You don't need an audience to exist. Over-explaining is one of the clearest signs of insecurity. People explain why they're tired, why they made a decision, why they didn't respond faster, why they changed direction. They think explanation builds trust. Most of the time, it builds weakness. Because explanation is often a request for approval. You don't need approval for decisions you stand behind. Silence communicates certainty better than words ever will. If someone can pull explanations out of you, they control you. If someone's opinion forces a response, they own your attention. And if something controls your attention, it controls you. Silence breaks that loop. Silence also matters when it comes to progress. Most people talk about what they're going to do. They announce plans. They narrate ambition. Talking feels productive. It isn't. Talking releases emotional reward before the work is done. Silence keeps pressure on execution. Quiet effort compounds. Loud intention evaporates. Move quietly. Work consistently. Let results speak. That's discipline. Silence also sharpens focus. Noise fragments attention. Conversations. Notifications. Media. Constant input. When noise disappears, focus sharpens. That's why solitude feels uncomfortable at first. Your mind is addicted to stimulation. Silence removes stimulation. And addiction always fights removal. If you can tolerate silence, you can tolerate focus. If you can tolerate focus, you can tolerate pressure. This is why isolation is powerful. Not forever. Not out of fear. But by design. Planned silence trains clarity. Strong people are not always talking. They are observing. Listening. Measuring. They speak when it matters. Weak people talk to fill space. Silence forces you to sit with your thoughts. That's where most people run. Because their thoughts are undisciplined. Silence reveals internal chaos. Noise hides it. If you cannot sit quietly with yourself, you will always seek distraction. Discipline begins the moment you stop escaping. Here is a rule you must train daily. Speak less than you feel like speaking. Not nothing. Just less. Answer what is asked. Remove unnecessary words. Pause before responding. This is not a social trick. This is self-control training. Another rule. If you feel an urge to explain, stop. That urge is emotion trying to regain control. Let it pass. Pause first. Decide second. Silence also protects identity. When you talk less, you absorb fewer opinions. Less comparison. Less validation seeking. Less emotional noise. You become internally referenced. That is mental toughness. Most people fear silence because it feels like invisibility. They believe if they are quiet, they will be overlooked. That fear reveals dependence. You are not here to be noticed. You are here to be effective. Effectiveness does not announce itself. It accumulates quietly. Silence gathers energy. Noise scatters it. Silence gathers energy. Noise scatters it. Repeat that until it becomes instinct. Strong people protect their focus aggressively. Weak people protect their comfort. Silence removes comfort. And that's why it works. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to explain your process. You don't need to narrate your growth. You need to execute. Results don't need noise. Silence is not withdrawal. It is selection. You choose when to engage. You choose when to speak. You choose when to act. That choice is power. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming controlled. And control is the foundation of mastery. You've learned how to regulate reactions. You've learned how silence builds authority. Now it's time to confront what destroys discipline faster than anything else. Distraction. If this chapter helped clarify your thinking, let it settle before moving on. These audiobooks are designed to be listened to more than once. Chapter 5. Focus is a trained skill, not a talent. Most people think focus is something you're born with. They believe some people are just wired differently. That they have a special brain, a special drive, a special ability to concentrate. That belief is comforting. Because if focus is talent, then lack of focus is not your fault. But it's a lie. Focus is not a gift. It is a skill. And like every skill, it responds to training or neglect. If you struggle to concentrate, it does not mean you're broken. It means you've been training the opposite. You have been training distraction. That's the uncomfortable truth. Every day, whether you notice it or not, you are shaping your attention. Every time you switch tasks impulsively, you train instability. Every time you scroll instead of finishing a task, you train escape. Every time you avoid depth, you train avoidance. And then people wonder why they can't focus for more than 10 minutes. Focus didn't disappear. It was abandoned. The real enemy is not lack of focus, it's constant interruption. Your mind is not weak. It is overstimulated. Modern life trains interruption as normal behavior. Notifications, messages, updates, alerts, endless content. Each one pulls your attention away, just for a moment. But attention does not reset instantly. Every interruption fragments depth. Focus requires continuity. And continuity requires resistance. That resistance feels uncomfortable. Your mind will protest. It will feel bored, restless, irritated, uneasy. That discomfort is not a sign you should stop. It is the signal that training has begun. Most people mistake discomfort for danger. It isn't. It's growth. Your brain is addicted to novelty. Your mind craves stimulation. New information. New input. New signals. That craving is not accidental. It is conditioned. Every swipe rewards the brain. Every notification delivers novelty. Every distraction gives relief. But relief is not progress. Addiction always fights discipline. That's why focus feels hard in the beginning. You are not fighting laziness. You are fighting conditioning. And conditioning can be reversed, but only through rules. Focus does not come from motivation, it comes from rules. Motivation is unstable. Rules are reliable. Rules remove decision-making. Rules create structure. And structure creates freedom. This is how disciplined people operate. They do not ask, "Do I feel like focusing?" They decide in advance. When work begins, what gets ignored, what matters, and what doesn't. If you don't decide, the world will decide for you. And the world will always choose distraction. Most people try to focus while keeping every door open. Messages on. Notifications active. Attention divided. That's not focus. That's self-sabotage. You cannot do deep work while remaining emotionally available to everyone. If it controls your attention, it controls you. Depth is built through single-tasking. Multitasking is a myth. It does not make you efficient. It makes you shallow. One task. One window. One objective. That's how momentum forms. Every time you switch tasks, your brain resets. Depth collapses. Strong people are not better planners. They are better at staying with one thing. They protect their focus aggressively. Weak people protect their comfort. Comfort avoids depth. Depth creates results. Silence is not optional, it's required. Focus and silence are inseparable. Noise fragments attention. Silence sharpens it. That's why silence feels uncomfortable at first. Your mind is addicted to input. Remove the input, and the addiction protests. That protest is not a problem. It's proof. If you can tolerate silence, you can tolerate focus. If you can tolerate focus, you can tolerate pressure. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the gateway. If you cannot sit with boredom, you will never reach mastery. Most people escape boredom instantly. And in doing so, they stay average. Mastery is quiet. Repetitive. Unexciting. That's why so few people reach it. Human add, reflection pause. Take a moment here. Notice your impulse to move on quickly. Notice the urge for the next idea. The next hit of stimulation. That urge is the exact thing this chapter is training you to control. Stay with it. This is not entertainment. It's discipline training. Focus also requires recovery. Constant stimulation exhausts the mind. Endless consumption weakens attention. Deep focus must be followed by rest, not more input. Rest without screens. Rest without noise. Rest without information. Stillness rebuilds capacity. This is discipline too. Most people think rest means distraction. It doesn't. It means absence of input. That's where focus regenerates. You cannot focus on yourself while consuming everyone else. Comparison destroys focus. So does constant observation of others. Their progress. Their opinions. Their validation. Attention is finite. If you spend it externally, nothing remains internally. Isolation, used intentionally, restores clarity. Not isolation from fear. Isolation by design. Time away from noise. Time away from opinions. That's where direction returns. Strong people don't chase attention. They invest it. And what you invest attention in becomes your life. Focus is about doing less, better. You don't need more systems. You don't need more hacks. You need fewer distractions. Cut inputs. Reduce options. Simplify tasks. Focus grows when complexity is removed. This work is not exciting. It is repetitive. Quiet. Often boring. And that's why it compounds. Most people quit before results appear. They confuse lack of excitement with lack of progress. Consistency beats intensity. Every time. Focus is built in small moments. Not in dramatic breakthroughs. But in micro-decisions. Stay with the task. Ignore the urge. Return attention. Again. And again. And again. That's training. You are not here to feel productive. You are here to produce results. And results come from focus. You've learned how silence protects energy. You've learned how focus multiplies it. Now it's time to confront what destroys discipline from the inside. Comfort. This audiobook is built for discipline, not distraction. Continue. Stay focused. This is where control is trained. Let's move on. Chapter 6. Comfort is the enemy of discipline. Comfort feels harmless. It isn't. Comfort is the most dangerous enemy of discipline because it never looks like resistance. It never announces itself as weakness. It never feels like failure. It feels reasonable. It feels earned. It feels like something you deserve. And that's exactly why it destroys progress quietly. Most people don't lose their potential in dramatic moments. They lose it in small decisions that feel comfortable. Sleeping a little longer. Delaying the difficult task. Choosing ease instead of effort. Not once, but repeatedly. That's how discipline erodes. Not through chaos, but through comfort. Most people believe life defeats them. That's not true. Most people defeat themselves by choosing what feels good instead of what builds strength. You have a choice. Every single day, you choose between comfort and control. Between ease and growth. Between relief now and power later. That is the real battle. Comfort removes resistance. And without resistance, nothing grows. Muscle doesn't grow without tension. Focus doesn't grow without effort. Discipline doesn't grow without discomfort. Remove resistance. And you remove development. Discipline, by definition, is uncomfortable. It requires acting when motivation is absent. Continuing when stopping would feel better. Staying present when escape is available. Most people misread this discomfort. They assume discomfort means something is wrong. It doesn't. Discomfort means training has begun. Comfort tells you to stop. Discipline tells you to stay. And the one you listen to becomes who you are. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. Comfort doesn't just weaken habits. It weakens identity. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you send yourself a message. I avoid difficulty. I don't tolerate resistance. I need things to feel good in order to act. You may not say it out loud, but the mind records it. An identity is built from repetition. Strong people are not born strong. They are shaped by repeatedly doing what feels uncomfortable, on purpose. Weakness is not a flaw. It's a habit. And comfort trains it daily. Look at real life. You wake up tired. You skip the hard work. You feel resistance. You delay the task. You feel bored. You reach for stimulation. Each decision feels small. None of them are. Every avoidance reinforces avoidance. Every escape lowers tolerance. This is how discipline dies, quietly. That's the key. Discipline is not intensity. It is consistency in discomfort. Comfort always has a voice. And it sounds reasonable. You deserve a break. Just this once. You'll do it tomorrow. Comfort never tells you to quit forever. It tells you to quit today. And then it repeats the same message tomorrow. Discipline also speaks quietly. But it speaks truth. Comfort wants relief. Discipline wants control. You cannot serve both. Comfort also trains emotional fragility. When life applies pressure, comfort-trained people collapse. They complain. They withdraw. They distract themselves. They look for escape. Not because they are incapable, but because they are untrained. Disciplined people respond differently. They absorb pressure. They stay steady. They execute anyway. That response is not personality. It's conditioning. Comfort also destroys focus. When the mind is used to ease, focus feels painful. Depth feels heavy. Stillness feels unbearable. Not because focus is hard, but because comfort has weakened tolerance. If you want unshakable focus, you must train discomfort. Boredom. Delay. Effort. These are not obstacles. They are tools. Here is a hard truth most people avoid. If your life is optimized for comfort, you will never reach your potential. Optimization for comfort removes challenge. Challenge is what sharpens you. You don't rise to the level of motivation. You fall to the level of discipline. And discipline is built where comfort ends. This is why routine matters. Routine removes negotiation. You don't ask, "How do I feel today?" You already decided. You execute regardless of mood. That is power. Comfort wants discussion. Discipline wants execution. You don't need motivation to be disciplined. You need structure. Structure creates pressure. Pressure builds strength. Strong people don't ask, "What do I want right now?" They ask, "What must be done?" That question builds identity. Comfort asks for permission. Discipline assumes responsibility. Comfort also keeps people talking instead of doing. They plan. They analyze. They explain delays. Talking feels productive. Action has friction. That's why results are rare. Execution is uncomfortable. Comfort avoids friction. If you want results, you must accept friction as normal. Another truth. Comfort is addictive. The more you choose it, the harder it becomes to resist. That's why small disciplines matter. Cold starts. Silent work. Uncomfortable routines. These are not extreme. They are corrective. They retrain the nervous system to tolerate resistance. You don't need to suffer. But you do need to stop escaping. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. Every time you choose discipline, you tell yourself, "I can be trusted. I follow through. I don't collapse under discomfort." That identity compounds. Comfort makes you fragile. Discipline makes you resilient. And resilience carries you through chaos. Most people are one inconvenience away from quitting. Disciplined people are steady regardless of conditions. That's the difference. Comfort weakens identity. Discipline restores it. Say it again. Comfort weakens identity. Discipline restores it. You don't need to eliminate comfort forever. You need to earn it. Comfort before discipline is decay. Comfort after discipline is recovery. That's balance. You don't rise by feeling good. You rise by doing what's required. You've learned how to regulate emotion. You've learned how silence builds authority. You've learned how focus compounds results. You've learned how comfort undermines discipline. Now it's time to understand the final shift. Results. This work is for people who choose mastery over comfort. Let's continue. Chapter 7. Let results speak, not explanations. Most people talk too much. They explain their intentions. They justify their delays. They describe what they're about to do. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Explanations don't move life forward. Results do. You don't need permission to execute. You don't need agreement. You don't need validation. You have a choice. You can spend your energy explaining yourself. Or you can spend it building something undeniable. That choice determines everything. Most explanations are not logical. They're emotional. People explain because they feel exposed. They explain because they feel behind. They explain because silence feels unsafe. Explanation is emotional relief. Execution is discipline. When people talk about what they're going to do, they release pressure without earning progress. That's why explanation feels good. And why it's dangerous. Look closely at human behavior. When someone is confident in their progress, they speak less. When someone is uncertain, they speak more. They promise. They justify. They reassure others, and themselves. Talking creates the illusion of movement. It feels productive. It isn't. The world does not reward intention. It responds to evidence. Results speak a language explanations never will. That's the key. Notice what happens when people fall behind. They increase communication. They send longer messages. They explain circumstances. They narrate effort. Not because it's required, but because pressure is building inside them. Talking releases that pressure temporarily. Execution keeps pressure where it belongs. On you. Strong people don't narrate their process. They let time and consistency speak. Weak people explain because they want approval before results. Approval seeking keeps you stuck. Results remove the need for approval. If it controls your emotions, it controls you. That includes the need to be understood. You don't need to be understood to move forward. You need to act. Here's another hard truth. The more you explain, the less confident you appear. Not because explanation is wrong, but because certainty does not require defense. When your behavior is aligned, silence is enough. Results reduce conversation. They close arguments. They end debate. They remove doubt. That's why disciplined people move quietly. They don't announce goals. They don't broadcast plans. They don't seek encouragement. They work. Daily. Consistently. Without witnesses. Most people want credit early. Disciplined people delay credit until it's unavoidable. Explanation is often fear in disguise. Fear of judgment. Fear of failing quietly. Fear of not being seen. But growth does not happen in public approval. It happens in private discipline. Here's the human truth. You felt the urge to explain. When progress was slow. When results weren't visible yet. When someone questioned your pace. That urge wasn't about clarity. It was about discomfort. Silence felt heavy. Uncertainty felt exposed. So explanation felt safer. That's the moment discipline is tested. Not when things are easy, but when results are not yet visible. You are not here to convince anyone. You are here to build something real. Another pattern to notice. When people are consistent, they talk less. When people are inconsistent, they talk more. Why? Because inconsistency creates internal tension. Talking relieves tension. Action resolves it. You don't need to explain why you're busy. You don't need to justify your pace. You don't need to announce progress. You need to keep showing up. That's it. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming grounded. Internally referenced. Emotionally regulated. Outcome focused. Results require patience. Patience requires silence. When you talk less, you conserve energy. That energy goes into execution. When you explain less, your thinking sharpens. When you move quietly, focus deepens. That's how momentum builds. Small actions. Repeated daily. Without announcement. Results do not arrive dramatically. They compound. And compounding is quiet. Most people quit because they don't see immediate proof. They start explaining instead of continuing. That's where they lose. If you stay consistent long enough, results become obvious. At that point, explanation becomes unnecessary. The work speaks. There is power in being underestimated. When people don't know what you're doing, they can't interfere. They can't compare. They can't distract. They can't project expectations onto you. Silence protects progress. Results protect identity. When behavior and intention align, insecurity disappears. That's discipline. Repeat the principle. Talk is cheap. Execution leaves evidence. Talk is cheap. Execution leaves evidence. Every time you feel the urge to explain, redirect that energy. Into the work. Into the habit. Into the process. That redirection compounds. This chapter is not telling you to disappear. It's teaching you to become undeniable. Undeniable doesn't argue. Undeniable doesn't chase recognition. Undeniable doesn't explain. It exists. You are not late. You are not behind. You are training. And training is invisible until it isn't. If you're still listening, you're already doing the work. That matters. You've learned to regulate emotion. You've learned to use silence. You've learned to focus deeply. You've learned to reject comfort. Now it's time to understand the final internal shift. Identity. Results don't need permission. They speak for themselves. Most people explain because they feel pressure. They want reassurance. They want understanding. They want release. But explanation does not create progress. Execution does. You have a choice. You can talk about change. Or you can build it quietly. Talking feels safe. Working feels uncertain. Uncertainty is where growth happens. When you stop explaining, energy returns to you. That energy becomes focus. Focus becomes consistency. Consistency becomes results. Results remove the need to speak. Silence is not avoidance. It is confidence. You don't need to narrate effort. You need to repeat it. Day after day. Small actions compound quietly. Most people stop before compounding begins. You didn't. Stay with it. Talk is temporary. Results last. Let them speak. Brief pause. This is the work most people avoid. Stay with it. Let's continue. Chapter 8. Comfort weakens identity, discipline restores it. Comfort feels safe. That's why it's dangerous. Comfort never looks like the enemy. It feels reasonable. It feels deserved. It feels harmless. Comfort tells you nothing urgent is required. It whispers that effort can wait. It convinces you that tomorrow is always available. And slowly, without drama, without collapse, identity erodes. Most people don't lose discipline in one moment. They lose it decision by decision. One skipped effort. One avoided discomfort. One excuse that feels justified. That's how identity weakens. Quietly. You have a choice. Every day, you are voting for the person you are becoming. Not with intention. Not with belief. Not with motivation. With behavior. Comfort trains one identity. Discipline trains another. That is the difference. Identity is not what you say about yourself. It is what you do consistently. Especially when no one is watching. Comfort removes resistance. Resistance is what forges identity. Without resistance, there is no proof of who you are. Anyone can feel disciplined. Few people can act disciplined. Discipline creates proof. That's the key. Proof builds belief. Belief builds identity. Listen to how people speak about themselves. I'm trying. I usually do. I plan to start. Those are comfort phrases. They soften commitment. They leave exits open. They protect ease. Disciplined people speak differently. I do. I don't. This is non-negotiable. That language is not confidence. It's evidence. Comfort creates flexible identity. Discipline creates fixed standards. Standards do not negotiate. Comfort also damages self-trust. Every time you promise yourself something and don't follow through, something breaks. Not externally. Internally. You begin to doubt your own word. At first, it's subtle. Then it compounds. Soon, you stop making promises entirely. Not because you are wise, but because you no longer trust yourself to keep them. That is a fractured identity. Discipline restores self-trust. Every follow-through repairs it. Every uncomfortable action reinforces the belief. I do what I say. That belief is powerful. Comfort destroys it quietly. You don't feel the damage immediately. You feel it later. When pressure arrives. When difficulty shows up. When life demands strength. That's when weakened identity collapses. Strong identity doesn't panic. It responds. That response is trained. Comfort also makes people emotionally fragile. When your life is built around ease, any challenge feels personal. Delay feels disrespectful. Criticism feels like an attack. Effort feels unfair. That's not sensitivity. That's comfort dependency. Discipline hardens emotional edges. Not into coldness. Into stability. Stable people don't overreact. They don't personalize everything. They don't need to defend themselves constantly. They know who they are. And that knowing is built, not imagined. Here is the human truth. Identity is built in the moments you don't want to act. When you are tired. When you are bored. When no reward is visible. When no one will notice. Those moments matter most. Anyone can act when motivated. Identity is built when motivation is absent. That's why comfort is dangerous. Comfort waits for motivation. Discipline moves without it. Most people believe confidence comes first. It doesn't. Confidence is a byproduct. It comes after repeated discipline. You don't think your way into identity. You behave your way into it. Comfort keeps behavior inconsistent. Inconsistency fractures identity. Discipline restores alignment. Alignment creates confidence. That is the sequence. Comfort also pushes attention outward. When effort is low, comparison increases. You watch others. You measure progress externally. You consume instead of build. Comparison weakens identity. Discipline eliminates comparison. When you are executing daily, there is no space to look sideways. Your world becomes smaller, sharper, more controlled. That is strength. Here is a hard truth most people avoid. If you avoid discomfort, you will avoid responsibility. Responsibility requires pressure. Pressure reveals character. Comfort hides it. Most people want to feel strong. Disciplined people become strong. Feeling is temporary. Identity is durable. Comfort encourages self-labeling. I'm just not disciplined. I'm not built like that. That's not my personality. Those labels protect comfort. They excuse inaction. Identity is not discovered. It is constructed. Through repetition. Daily. Quietly. Without applause. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. If your identity is comfort-based, pressure breaks you. If your identity is discipline-based, pressure strengthens you. Comfort weakens identity. Discipline restores it. Say it again. Comfort weakens identity. Discipline restores it. This chapter is not about eliminating pleasure. It's about earning it. Comfort before discipline is decay. Comfort after discipline is recovery. There is a difference. Disciplined people rest without guilt. Comfort-driven people rest without effort. One restores. The other erodes. Identity solidifies when standards become non-negotiable. You don't debate with yourself every morning. You decide once. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I tolerate. Then you act accordingly. Comfort asks questions. Discipline gives answers. Identity follows discipline, not emotion. You don't wait to feel ready. You act because it aligns with who you are becoming. That is freedom. Not freedom from effort. Freedom from internal chaos. You've learned to regulate emotion. You've learned to use silence. You've learned to focus deeply. You've learned to reject comfort. You've learned to let results speak. Now comes the final discipline. Letting outcomes define you, not opinions. This channel exists to sharpen your mindset, not to entertain your emotions. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. Brief pause. Let's finish this properly. Chapter 9. Let results speak, not explanations. Stop talking. Stop explaining. Stop defending. The world does not need your excuses. It does not need your intentions. It needs your results. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Say it again. Let it settle. Your actions are louder than your arguments. Your results cannot be debated. Most people spend their lives explaining themselves. They rationalize why they didn't start earlier. They describe what they intend to do. They ask for understanding. They seek approval. They justify effort that doesn't exist. All of that talking is wasted energy. It does not create progress. It only creates distraction. It only delays your results. You have a choice. You can justify. Or you can execute. Execution leaves proof. Words leave shadows. Execution leaves proof. Noise leaves nothing. Execution leaves proof. Proof builds identity. Look around. Notice the people who talk the most. Notice how often they explain instead of act. Notice how many of them still fail to produce results. Now notice those who don't announce. Those who never defend. Those who show up quietly, every single day, and do the work. Those are the people who achieve. Those are the people whose results speak for themselves. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise fades. Execution leaves proof. Results endure. Here's the hard truth. If you explain your effort, you are already weak. If you justify your choices, you are already distracted. If you defend your work, you are already giving away power. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise is temporary. Execution leaves proof. Proof is permanent. You don't need permission to act. You don't need validation to persist. You don't need recognition to perform. All you need is discipline. All you need is repetition. All you need is execution. Every day, you have a choice. You can talk about change. Or you can build it quietly. Talking feels safe. Working feels uncertain. Uncertainty is where growth happens. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Most people fail not because they lack talent. Most fail because they explain too much. They spend more time describing their plan than executing it. They spend more energy justifying than building. Stop that. Stop explaining. Stop seeking reassurance. Stop rationalizing effort. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise dissipates. Execution leaves proof. Results remain. This is not theory. This is not opinion. This is behavior. You act. You repeat. You measure. You continue. Behavior creates proof. Words create illusions. Notice your impulses. Notice how often you want to explain. Notice how often you justify. Notice how often you try to convince yourself and others that you are working when you are not. Don't feed those impulses. Pause. Redirect energy. Act instead. Execution leaves proof. Words leave traces. Execution leaves proof. Noise leaves emptiness. Execution leaves proof. Results leave legacy. Leaders understand this instinctively. High performers act without announcement. They don't explain. They don't defend. They don't argue. They deliver. They produce. They leave proof. You have the same opportunity. You can stop talking. You can start acting. You can build results that cannot be ignored. Every time you execute without explanation, you strengthen your identity. Every repetition builds self-trust. Every quiet success compounds into undeniable proof. Execution leaves proof. Words leave shadows. Execution leaves proof. Proof grows quietly. Execution leaves proof. Identity becomes undeniable. Here's the behavioral instruction. Choose one area of your life. One task. One goal. Take action daily without announcement. Resist explaining your progress. Measure success in results, not words. Watch what happens. Notice how energy shifts back to you. Notice how focus deepens. Notice how your identity aligns with action. Execution leaves proof. Noise fades. Execution leaves proof. Words dissipate. Execution leaves proof. Results compound. Most people stop at talking. Most people debate endlessly. Most people seek permission instead of producing impact. You are not most people. You are the one who shows up quietly. You are the one who repeats daily. You are the one who lets results speak. Execution leaves proof. Words leave traces. Execution leaves proof. Proof builds identity. Execution leaves proof. Identity endures. Notice the paradox. The more you talk, the weaker your impact. The more you act silently, the louder your results. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is discipline. Silence is proof. Every explanation you resist strengthens control. Every justification you refuse strengthens focus. Every action you take without announcement strengthens identity. Execution leaves proof. Words leave shadows. Execution leaves proof. Noise leaves nothing. Execution leaves proof. Results endure. At the end of every day, ask yourself, did I act, or did I explain? Did I build, or did I justify? Did I produce, or did I perform? Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise fades. Execution leaves proof. Proof lasts. You don't rise to motivation. You fall to identity. You don't argue to convince. You act to demonstrate. If you remember nothing else from this chapter, remember this. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise disappears. Execution leaves proof. Results remain. You have a choice. You can talk. Or you can act. You can justify. Or you can deliver. You can explain. Or you can produce. Execution leaves proof. Words leave shadows. Execution leaves proof. Noise leaves nothing. Execution leaves proof. Proof defines you. You mastered restraint. You mastered patience. You mastered focus. Now master execution. Let your work speak. Let your results leave proof. Let discipline define your identity. Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Noise fades. Execution leaves proof. Results endure. You've learned this lesson. Now it's time to become the person who cannot break. Chapter 10. Become the person who does not break. Life will try to bend you. Life will test you. Life will push, pull, and pressure you, relentlessly. Most people break under this pressure. Most people crumble quietly. Most people fold when effort feels heavy. Not you. Not anymore. You are going to become the person who does not break. You are going to move through pressure like water moves around a stone. You are going to act, continue, endure, and emerge stronger every time. Breaking is easy. Strength is deliberate. Weakness is a choice. Resilience is trained. You have a choice. You can yield to life's pressure. Or you can stand firm and let discipline carry you forward. This is the difference between those who fail and those who master. This is the difference between people who talk about growth and people who embody it. This is the difference between identity based on comfort and identity forged by execution. You are about to learn the final lesson. Discipline is no longer practice. Discipline is who you are. Discipline must become identity. Not something you do when motivated. Not something you remember when convenient. Discipline must be automatic. Discipline must define your choices, your actions, your habits. The person who does not break does not rely on mood. The person who does not break does not chase inspiration. The person who does not break relies on structure, consistency, and standards. You have a choice. You can wait for motivation. Or you can continue because it is who you are. Stand up. Repeat after me. I am consistent. I am disciplined. I am unshakable. Breaking happens when identity is weak. When discipline is temporary. When effort depends on emotion or convenience. Strong identity does not collapse under boredom. Strong identity does not falter under delay. Strong identity does not negotiate with itself. The person who does not break does not argue with themselves. They don't debate. They don't bargain. They follow the plan. Not because it feels good. Not because it is easy. Not because someone is watching. Because it is who they are. You have a choice. You can follow impulse. Or you can follow structure. You can seek comfort. Or you can enforce discipline. Here's the behavioral instruction. Choose your non-negotiables. Pick 1 to 3 core habits or disciplines that define your day. Follow them regardless of emotion. Don't wait for energy, motivation, or inspiration. Repeat daily without excuse. No negotiation. No rationalization. No shortcuts. This is how you train unbreakable identity. Most people break because they lack structure. Most people fail because life applies slow, invisible pressure. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's consistent. And when you are untrained, it erodes you bit by bit. You've trained for this. You've learned to. Execute without reward. Persist without applause. Continue through boredom. Protect silence. Let results speak. All of that built something stronger than excitement. All of that built structure. Structure holds when emotion fades. Structure holds when motivation disappears. This is the key. Motivation is temporary. Emotion is unreliable. Discipline endures. Structure holds. Identity persists. The person who does not break moves deliberately. They are not rushed. They are not reactive. They conserve energy. They focus attention. They compound results quietly. You have a choice. You can act impulsively. Or you can act deliberately. Deliberate movement always wins. The person who does not break does not overextend. They do not try to prove themselves. They do not chase approval. They simply execute. They repeat. They persist. Execution becomes effortless when discipline is identity. Breaking comes from dependence. Dependence on motivation. Dependence on validation. Dependence on reaction. The person who does not break eliminates dependence. They rely on internal standards. Internal standards do not negotiate. Internal standards do not fail when life applies pressure. You have a choice. You can follow the crowd. Or you can enforce your standards quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Repeat after me. I am responsible for my actions. I am accountable to my identity. I do what I say, every day. At night, identity becomes visible. When the world is quiet. When no one is watching. When there is no audience. Only you remain. Only your habits remain. Only your consistency remains. Ask yourself, did I execute today? Did I follow the plan? Did I uphold my identity? If yes, you did not break. If yes, you strengthened your foundation. If yes, you are building a life that cannot collapse. The person who does not break understands compounding. Small choices repeated daily create unstoppable momentum. Small actions repeated silently build unshakable identity. Small wins repeated consistently leave proof that you are disciplined. You have a choice. You can wait for perfection. Or you can repeat, imperfectly, every day. You can seek comfort. Or you can embrace discipline. Discipline is uncomfortable. Discipline is slow. Discipline is silent. Discipline is boring. Discipline is unrelenting. But it works. It builds strength. It creates unbreakable identity. Here is the final behavioral instruction. Pick one habit today. One action that defines your identity. Remove choice. Remove negotiation. Remove excuses. Repeat it tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. Track nothing. Explain nothing. Let your actions speak. Execution leaves proof. Consistency builds identity. Identity protects you when pressure arrives. Identity makes breaking impossible. The person who does not break is rare. They are calm under chaos. They are consistent under fatigue. They are stable under pressure. They are patient under delay. You have a choice. You can panic. Or you can continue. You can collapse. Or you can persist. You can react. Or you can act deliberately. You are learning to act deliberately. You are learning to persist through boredom. You are learning to repeat without reward. You are learning to let results speak. You are learning to protect silence. You are learning to enforce identity. This is how you become unbreakable. Remember, motivation fades. Emotion fades. Excitement fades. Discipline does not. Structure does not. Identity does not. You are the person who does not break. Execution leaves proof. Repetition compounds silently. Discipline becomes identity. Identity becomes unshakable. You have a choice. You can be like everyone else. Or you can become unbreakable. You've learned restraint. You've learned focus. You've learned execution. You've learned consistency. You've learned patience. Now, you learn unbreakable identity. Carry this forward quietly. Carry this forward relentlessly. Carry this forward every day. No announcement. No explanation. No negotiation. Just repetition. Just structure. Just discipline. This is the final training ground. This is the last layer of unshakable identity. This is what makes a person who does not break. You mastered your fear. You mastered comfort. You mastered distraction. You mastered silence. Now, you master yourself. If this chapter helped clarify your thinking, let it settle before moving on. These audiobooks are designed to be listened to more than once. This is what it comes down to. You either react, or you regulate. You either let the world shape your emotions, or you shape yourself. Every day, every moment, that choice is being presented to you. Most people never notice it. They react automatically. They explain automatically. They distract themselves automatically. You don't anymore. Self-mastery is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. Self-mastery is consistent. It is choosing discipline when comfort is easier. Silence when explanation feels tempting. Focus when distraction is available everywhere. That is power. Not power over others. Power over yourself. You do not rise to motivation. You fall to identity. You do not act when inspired. You act because this is who you are. That is the shift. This audiobook was not designed to excite you. It was not built to hype your emotions. It was not created to entertain you for a moment. It was built to train you. To slow you down. To sharpen your structure. To make discipline automatic. Return to these chapters. Listen again. Not for inspiration, for reinforcement. Apply what you heard daily. Repeat it until restraint feels natural. Until silence feels comfortable. Until control becomes instinctive. For the next 30 days, keep it simple. React less. Focus more. Move in silence. Let results speak. Do not announce your plans. Do not explain your process. Do not defend your pace. Let execution handle that for you. Every day, ask yourself, did I act, or did I explain? Did I build, or did I justify? Did I persist, or did I negotiate with myself? Execution leaves proof. Words create noise. Execution leaves proof. Results define identity. Execution leaves proof. Consistency compounds quietly. Your habits now define you. Your standards now protect you. Your identity now sustains you when emotion fades. Discipline is not occasional. Discipline is not temporary. Discipline is who you are. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is energy conserved. Silence is clarity. Silence is control. Focus is not something you find. Focus is something you enforce. It is built through repetition, through patience, through doing the work when no one is watching. You cannot control the world. You cannot control other people. You cannot control outcomes perfectly. You can only control yourself. And self-mastery is the ultimate advantage. This is why everything you learned here matters. Every small choice shapes who you become. Every act of restraint strengthens your foundation. Every disciplined action reinforces identity. You are not finished. This is not an ending. This is alignment. Carry these lessons forward. Live them quietly. Repeat them relentlessly. And over time, without noise, without announcement, your life will begin to reflect the discipline you now carry within. For the next 30 days, react less. Focus more. Move in silence. Let results speak. Master yourself first. Everything else follows. And before you go, if you found value in this work, if these words helped sharpen your thinking, or strengthen your discipline, we would truly appreciate your support. A simple like and subscription helps us continue creating focused, high-quality content like this for you. We're genuinely grateful that you spent your time here with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for training with us. We hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, stay disciplined, stay focused, and move quietly.